Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
Welcome back to the Prime Life Podcast, where we explore the ideas, innovations, and people shaping the future of longevity. If you're interested in the future of financial well-being, longevity, innovation, and building solutions that truly meet people where they are, this is the episode you won't want to miss. I'm Mary Crean, and I'm the host. And today I have a very interesting guest. His name is Adam Wilensky. He's focused on strategic business development in the senior living and disability services space. His goal is to support organizations with the strategic goal of implementing meaningful technology that improves care and connection. Well, I just love that, Adam. Welcome to Prime Life Podcast. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself before we jump right into the questions.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Mary. I had been working in technology for about 30 years. I spent 20 of those years in the entertainment space back in California, working for News Corporation and Fox. And then pivoted when I hit the age of 50. It was just time for something different, something new. I just felt a connection with the aging services industry. I'd heard from a couple of people that there was a lot of change happening, paradigm shift, if you will. And it just felt like a natural connection for me. For about 7 years now, I've been working specifically on the age tech space, most recently with a company called Eugeria, which means aging well in Greek. Company specializes in technology for memory care, cognitive care, and assisted living. Enjoying
What
it.
do you
Yeah,
think
thank you.
is driving innovation today in products and services designed for older adults? Right now, what do you see that's happening?
It's a great question, complex question, but the status quo, what served us in the past is no longer viable for the present, really. The demand is too high. People are now expecting you to have technological solutions at their disposal, whether it's a family member, whether it's a decision maker who's looking for a community to move into, or family members who, have certain ideas in mind about what constitutes this sort of next generation of care. I would say that what's unifying as a theme is innovation. I was speaking to a client just a few minutes ago, and what she said to me was interesting. She's like, we're constantly being bombarded with sales pitches and people reaching out and kind of wanting to sell us things, and which is great. I mean, that's the marketplace, and I'm supportive of that, certainly. But what she also added to that was that frequently these solutions are not specifically designed for senior living, as it were. They are sort of one size fits all, and that's not viable.
Can you talk a little bit about what those differences may be and how that may look from your perspective? Because that's a really great point that you mentioned, and I quite honestly never thought about that.
Well, I think it really comes down to philosophy, right? Frequently, people will be in an incubator, startup, or maybe even an established company, and they'll see dollar signs, right? It's certainly it's a growing segment. There's a frequently used phrase, the silver tsunami, which for some people really signifies a massive influx of capital. When that happens, when you have a position that sort of comes at it from a solution looking for a problem, you're likely going to fail. And I think I've seen that time and time again. It's really all coming down to the need. And that need is evolving rapidly. And it's an exciting time in the space overall. Whether you're looking at it from, romance scams, there are people who are specifically focused on that because so many seniors are vulnerable to these bad actors, or you're looking for tools that are specifically designed for cognitive care. That's a whole other ball game, and it requires a very scientific approach and a very nuanced approach. So yeah, that's a somewhat truncated answer to probably a conversation that could last for hours.
Yeah. And we've heard some of those tidbits of information from other guests who've been on when you talked about the romance scams and different things. It makes us all stop and pause, and because technology is changing all the time, and the bad actors, not to sound negative, but the bad actors are getting really good at what they're doing with technology to swindle people and such. What do you think the changing expectations are from silver tsunami, baby boomers to Gen X and beyond? How is that reshaping what aging well means today?
Oh, man, it's such an interesting question. And, it's one of those conversations that can take on so many different forks in the road. I would say what's happening right now is that people are far more sophisticated than it used to be. There was this sort of like implicit bias, this is a form of soft ageism, as you will, that people over the age of 50, 55, they don't really have a handle on technology. Completely untrue. So, juxtapose that with their children, their extended family members, their colleagues, their coworkers, people, whether it's their church or their synagogue or what have you. Everybody's buried in their phone now. And everybody is completely accustomed to this idea of instantaneous answers to complex questions. I would say the expectation right now are that I want it fast, I want it effective, and I want it cheap. So there's a pressure now to deliver these solutions at cost. We're living in an age of budget cuts that are significant. They're impacting almost every organization out there. And so what people are looking for is scalable solutions that are not going to break the bank, that are effective. And that's a tough, that's a tough group of factors to kind of find a complementary solution to. So I would say, to summarize that, it is an exciting time. I think the next decade is going to bring about quite a bit of consolidation, but I think conversely, it's also going to bring about this ability for very small teams to create really breakthrough solutions.
That's a great segue, though, into this next question, which is where do you see the impact, especially in areas of social connection, independence, and memory care in technology as we're all aging and people are living longer?
Indeed. Yeah. And will continue to do so. I think there's a significant delta right now between sort of the expectations a lot of seniors have where they want to age in place. They want that independence, but conversely, many of them really do need to be in a place that offers them support and resources. So kind of looking at it from a broad perspective, I would say you've got solutions that are designed for at-home monitoring and fall prevention, which are really powerful and evolving rapidly. They also need to be simple to use. And one specific example is if you give somebody who has mild cognitive challenges an iPad and expect them to be able to log into a platform and monitor, their medications and refills and so forth, you're likely going to fail. And that's another example of building platforms and software and hardware that has its audience in mind. The flip side of that is, we are as a society facing a massive influx of people who are now having to face an Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis. I think the stat that gets thrown around quite frequently is, 11,000 people are turning 65 every day. And that is going to remain in place for the next 10, 20 years. Significant portion of those folks are going to have dementia. We don't know exactly why, that falls outside of my domain expertise, but that incidence is rising. And so we have to find ways to support them. And by extension, their caregivers, because they carry a very, very heavy burden.
And really that brings me to the next point. This role of collaboration that's needed between healthcare, tech, community organizations, and the role they're going to be playing that's inclusive and human-centered support for older adults, because we're talking about technology, but this human-centered support is so critical to living longer, because we've had several guests on the show talk about social isolation and how that can be so devastating to aging and can cause so many health challenges. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I could say that social isolation and loneliness wasn't just endemic to seniors, but it's taking place across almost every segment of society. So many people are now either working at home or reliant on their apps and their phones and whatnot for that social, communication and connection. And it's lacking. And we, as a society are going to face, I think, a very steep price if we don't begin addressing that challenge. I think for seniors, what you find is that, in my experience at least, they are looking for that social connection. They do want that independence. I would say my focus area, and the focus area of my peers, is really working with senior living providers, whether it's memory care, assisted living, occupational therapy, and so forth. So what I love about what I get to do right now is market and sell tools that are designed specifically for them that sort of break through that isolation. So that is where I think some of the most viable products and services are going to arise. Is how do you create that connection? Interactivity is a major factor there. So if you're building hardware, is that hardware shareable? Is it portable? On the software side of it, is the user interface accessible to seniors and their care teams? Does it make sense for them? I think if you haven't answered that question, the product's not ready for market. And I think, again, that sort of touches on this concept of the silver tsunami. What does it really mean? Because we are being called on as a society to support our seniors. In my opinion, and I think it's a widely shared opinion, we owe it to them to have viable services that are engineered to create joy for them in a dignified manner, and by extension for their families. I mean, I'll go to certain communities and I'll ask, when was the last time an extended family member came to visit? And some places say it's been a year. Now I don't blame anybody for that. Life is hard. We are a large country. People live on one coast to the other. So it's certainly no fault of people who are, have a family member, in a community. Many of them are raising kids. So finding those tools that are scalable, that are dignified, and that are engineered for them is absolutely key. And I think it's an incredibly exciting time in that respect.
Yeah, no, you make some really good points. And it's that sandwich generation, but also there are individuals that they don't have children. They may or may not have nieces and nephews that are caring, that can stop by and visit with them. And so there are all these other factors. It is very interesting, and I do agree, things need to be portable, they need to be reputable, they need to be scalable, and they need to be in such a way that someone who is perhaps older and maybe is suffering a little bit from dementia or in this beginning stages, they can still feel some autonomy to do some things that they want to do when they want to do them, and how, without necessarily always asking for help. Let's break out a crystal ball and fast forward to 2036. How would technology and design come together to make that vision feel truly transformational?
And we'll get that answer after a brief word from our commercial sponsors.
NASA is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We offer insurance products that can help you meet your retirement goals, such as protecting your savings, securing lifetime income, or paying for healthcare costs. We're dedicated to providing best-in-class service and are keeping things simple, and we'll have your back. We have around 400,000 policyholders and contract holders and have been doing this for a long time, 170 years, but we remain humble enough to always try to improve. For more information, visit NFG.
Wow. I think, first of all, technology is not going to save the day, right? I think we have all been conditioned to sort of think about the Jetsons and this magic pill. And now, of course, it's AI. And of course, look, I love technology and I've been immersed in it for decades. But if there's one thing I've learned is that it comes and goes, right? And what worked today is likely going to be perishable in 6, 12, 18, maybe 24 months. So I think we have to continue to evolve, and we have to find ways to integrate these tools in a care continuum. So let's say if you're managing a life plan community, think about what tools and what solutions are going to be functional, not just for memory care, but for people in assisted living. What does your rehab team need and so forth? So I think as the technology evolves and we're able to share code base and hardware becomes easier to fabricate because of breakthroughs in AI and 3D modeling and so forth, we're going to see, I think, a rapid shift. That being said, I think there's going to be a high failure rate for a lot of these products, simply because the product cycle is so fast now that essentially it's in market before it's been, a beta tested. That's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because bringing a product to market, even in a test bed, is better than sort of noodling on it for 5 years, until which point maybe it's not viable anymore.
Exactly.
What I would say to anybody who's interested in this space is, keep your eyes on the small players and really look at where the venture capital is going, because it's required for us to have a viable functioning society. And technology has a key role to play in that respect. Conversely, focus on the caregiver role. It's a little bit of a hot potato right now, but immigration is something that has gotten really political, unfortunately.
Yes.
If you go to any facility, and that's the F word, you're not supposed to use the word facility anymore, by the way. So I'm catching myself here. A community or an operator, you're going to find that they absolutely need a steady influx of people coming in from overseas. So is there a software application that helps you find the right people, that helps you train them? Because at the end of the day, you cannot replace human touch. I was at a conference last year, and the hot topic was soft robots. This idea that, because of a lack of human capital, we're going to need to develop these robots that have skin and can feed somebody a meal. Now, imagine if you're a senior or you have somebody with cognitive challenges, how are they going to feel if a synthetic human is thrust in their face and is trying to feed them? I would have a challenge with that. And I love technology and I love science fiction. So there is never going to be a replacement for the human experience, for human touch. It's absolutely critical to the future. So we need to do it sensibly, but we also need to provide caregivers and operators the right tools to achieve their goals.
I agree with you in terms of that human touch. And of course, I love that you mentioned early on the Jetsons, because we do talk about the Jetsons here and there. It shows up in some of our episodes because we do talk about technology. And I will connect you with a gentleman who's been on our podcast. His company's called Eugeria. You may know him.
O'Neill, sure. Yeah.
He's doing a little bit of kind of what you were talking about. And he did state pretty much what you said about, caregiving, the shortage and different things. But one of the things that I love that he said that I still remember about, cross-generationally, younger people want to spend some time with some older folks because they want to hear their wisdom. Older folks want to talk to younger people and share that wisdom with them. It can be a really great win-win. Any final thoughts before we close up? And I do have a final question for you, Adam, before we get there.
Well, I was just going to say that I think Neil, bringing up Neil Shaw is a great example. That's a guy who has been very successful managing funds. He's got a mind for venture capital. I don't know him personally or well, but I follow him closely. I think he's a really intriguing person, partially because he's upended a lot of the established care models that are out there. And that is exactly the sort of thinking that we need. Somebody who is dynamic, independent, and is not afraid to challenge the status quo. So, Mary, I know you had one closing question.
You've had an interesting career, and you talked about your transition.
Well, thank you.
You can do anything that you want. Why do you wake up every day and do what you do?
Well, thank you. First of all, that's very kind of you. It's very generous. I've been very fortunate. I've had great mentors, and I'm one of those people, and you can relate to this. I'm sure that our generation came from playing outside, without gadgets, without devices, kind of living life in a very free way to, in some respects, being both freed and constrained by technology. I really love working with seniors, and the work I get to do now is the most gratifying work I've ever done. I think, when you come from product development and marketing and so forth, whether it's an app or what have you, it's all so perishable, right? So it's, what's the market value? What is the lifetime value of a certain product? It differs. But the relationships that I've gotten to build in this space are just unforgettable. And if I'm in a, visiting community and I get to connect with somebody who is in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 100, it's joyful. It's the most, like I said, the most gratifying work I've ever got to. So it's a privilege.
I love your answer. And actually, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to have someone on my podcast that's 92. And she wrote a book, and she's amazing. And I can't wait, and I look forward to that. So I definitely think by meeting older adults, they can enrich our lives. Yes. Adam, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way? We will put everything in the show notes.
Sure. Well, I'm on LinkedIn, Adam Wilensky, LinkedIn, social handles at Adam Wilensky, AdamWilensky. A little bit of a tongue twister, but I love to brainstorm with folks. I love to have digital coffees, in-person coffees. I'm on the conference circuit quite a bit, and I love to connect with people. So appreciate you having me on, Mary. Love the podcast platform. Really love that you're giving voice to this space. It's a fascinating time to be alive and to be involved in this sector.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your compliment, and it definitely feels good to educate individuals and have people like you on that are really making a difference in such an important part of our life, right? As we get older, we want to look forward. We don't want to feel drudgery, and we want to help those that are in the caregiving roles that they are, because we certainly know that it's not an easy place to be in. So thank you for spending time with me, Adam, and to our listeners, thank you for joining us again on the Prime Life Podcast. Tell your friends, your colleagues, your relatives, whoever. Thanks again, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you, Mary. It's been a privilege.
Thanks, Adam.
.com. Nassau Insurance products are issued by Nassau Life and Annuity Company of Hartford, Connecticut, Nassau Life Insurance Company, East Greenbush, New York, or Nassau Life Insurance Company of Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. Subsidiaries of Nassau Financial Group. Products are not available in all areas. Policyholder counts are for all Nassau companies as of September 30th, 2022, and are subject to change.